Thank you very much for staying. Welcome back. Now, President Akufo-Addo has been giving some clarity on how he intends to fully move Ghana beyond aid. This includes funding and implementation of the program. The president disclosed this in his address to mark the 61st anniversary, Independence Day anniversary. We'll look at some of these measures in the following report.
The president in his address argued that this plan would be guided by fiscal discipline and value addition to our natural resources.
Getting our country to a situation beyond aid means we add value to our exports and stop the export of materials such as cocoa, gold, bauxite, manganese and oil in their raw state.
He added that government also hopes to reach an agreement soon with potential partners to establish an alumini refinery and expand the Valco smelter. All these would improve the country's earnings to fund other critical projects. The president says the plan of reducing donor dependency should not be seen as another political talk.
Ghana Beyond Aid is meant to be more than a slogan. It is meant to propel us into the frame of mind that would quicken the pace of our development. It is meant to change our mindset from one of dependency to one of achieving our destiny. It is meant to put us in charge of our own affairs and make us truly independent. Above all, Ghana Beyond Aid will give us the respect and dignity we deserve.
Meanwhile, President Akufo-Addo has announced the creation of more jobs in the public sector this year, beginning with the recruitment of 100,000 young men and women in the Nation Builders Corps. But many question whether this plan can be realized under an IMF program.
All right, let's move on to some story developing now. And Unibank is set to have taken over ADB Bank's shares. That's according to reports by the Business and Financial Times. Now, CEO of the bank, Dr. Akufo-Addo Jr., confirmed this to Joy Business on phone earlier.
Yeah, I can confirm that the shareholders of Unibank and shareholders of Belstar have come to an arrangement where Belstar have pledged all the shares they have in ADB to Unibank, including the voting rights.
So what does it mean? I mean, do you take over the controlling us in the day-to-day running of the bank, or you just sit as just a strategic investor?
I think it's purely a business transaction. Everything is going to go on as normal. We're going to go about a normal business. ADB is going to go about a normal business. We'll see how things go.
All right, so that was Dr. Akufo-Addo Jr. He's the CEO of Unibank, now confirming the takeover to Joy Business. Meanwhile, the managing director of the Ghana Stock Exchange, GSE, in consultation with the chairman of the GSE Council and in accordance with Section 7 of the GSE Automated Trading Rules, has suspended trading in the shares of ADB with effect from March 7, 2018. That's today. Now, this is to allow the GSE clarify the news on the purported takeover of ADB. A statement released says the investing public will be duly informed of the outcome and resumption of trading in the shares of ADB later on. Now, in this same issue, let's talk to our stock analyst, Bertha Atubiga, to give us some clarity into this and to tell us the impact of this on the market. Good afternoon, Bertha. Welcome to the marketplace.
Manuel.
Right now, so if you've seen the release, what could be the implications on the markets?
Okay, let's say that this suspension is very necessary so that the Ghana Stock Exchange can actually investigate the reports that come out about the takeover of ADB by Unibank. It is something that has to be done. We need to get all the information and to be sure that the company has gone after has complied with every information required by both Bank of Ghana and the Securities and Exchange Commission. So that's the main reason why shares in ADB has been suspended on the stock market. It is the fourth largest bank now on the stock market, but it's not actually going to have a significant impact on other trading. So they're going to wait and wait for the results that's going to come out from this investigation so that trading will be unsuspended, suspension will be taken off and trading.
So currently, how are the shares of ADB doing or faring on the market? And if this news is confirmed, how would it impact the trading?
Well, ADB on the stock market this year, the stock market generally is very bullish. Significant impact in terms of share price volatility on the exchange. And we should know that it was better on the stock market recently, that was last year, and we haven't seen much as compared to Ecobank and some other exchanges. We don't see that much compared to other equities on the market.
All right, so moving forward, what would be your advice to prospective investors who would want to purchase ADB shares?
Well, they will have to hold on for now, so the suspension is over. Then they can go on and then buy shares of ADB.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Bertha, for that update. We'll come to you certainly in the course of the day for some more updates on this particular development. But let's stay further on in the banking industry. Barclays Bank has indicated it is working to acquire another financial institution this year. According to the bank, the move has been influenced by plans to grow the bank rather than meeting regulatory requirements. Patience Achiano is Managing Director of Barclays Bank.
The branch change is not expected to directly impact employees. So we don't expect any restructuring as a direct consequence of this branch change. However, to position ourselves to be able to deliver on our new strategy, we'll constantly be reviewing our operating model and we'll take the right decisions.
There's talk about restructuring, and you explained earlier on at a press conference that you're looking forward to anyone that shares in your view, your vision, and attributes and philosophy and your belief as well. So are we talking about possible acquisition?
Indeed, we are. And very much a part of what we're focusing on in Ghana here for 2018 is looking out for the right targets to acquire.
What has influenced? Is it more of a recapitalization move, or you want to be very strong in the country?
No, it's the need to grow. And we are exploring both organic and inorganic means.
So if I share in your philosophy and I make the proposal to you, you're going to take me on board?
If you have the right capabilities, yes.
What are the possible timelines that you're looking at?
As I mentioned to you, it's a focus for us this year. So immediately.
I see, very immediate then.
Yes, and it's very dependent on finding the right targets to acquire.
All right, so we'll certainly come back to the banking sector for more updates on the Unibank ADB takeover. But for now, the significant reduction in utility tariffs has been described as prudent by consumers and industries. But is this good news for all the sectors of the economy and even businesses? The following analysis takes a dive into the issues.
The amount of money businesses set aside for power consumption is said to be one of the biggest spending items on their books. Therefore, any reduction could go a long way to reduce their cost of operations. Joy Business understands that some companies could be saving almost 2 million Ghana cedis a year as a result of these reductions. But for many, how does this impact on the entire economy in terms of the good, the bad, and the ugly? It is believed that this move by the PLC would result in the reduction in the cost of doing business by most of these firms, a development which could lead to the expansion of their enterprises if they reinvest the expected savings, which could lead to the improvement of revenue from these firms in terms of tax collections from profits. The chief executive of the Association of Ghana Industries, Seth Chuma Kwabwa, has told Joy Business the reduction could lead to a slash down of the prices of some goods and services. However, it isn't all about excitement, as some private sector establishments are raising concerns over the worrying state of power producers in the country.
It's live on the marketplace. We're taking a short breather here. We'll be right back after this. Thank you very much for staying on. Welcome back. Now, as part of our Ghana Month celebration, we've been asking some CEOs 4 different questions about how far they have come developing their indigenous businesses. Now, today we want to find out what has been the biggest challenge of these CEOs in their line of work.
Capital is very difficult to come by. I mean, for example, there have been times that we really wanted to expand our business, and I mean, the banks needed a lot of collateral, security, or whatever, and there were times that, I mean, we didn't have, and also the interest rates, I mean, it's quite high.
My biggest challenge was at the time when I realized that all seemed to be lost for me, and I felt that there was a need for me to revamp my business. And instead of falling on the banks, I ended up selling a few properties here and there and being able to resuscitate the company.
The challenge is the unknown tomorrow. But if you are really an artist, like I am, you're always happy with what you do. True. You don't see problems, you see success. You just see when you finish the design and people are looking at it, you look at it, and you see you're happy, that's it. As you grow and you have to do business, that's where challenge is coming.
All right, so we'll bring you more answers to questions we posed on our Ghana Month series. Now, reports indicate that the central bank governor has been responding to the transaction deal between Unibank and ADB Bank. He was speaking at the commissioning of EcoBank's Ghana's headquarters building in Accra. Let's now reach out to my colleague, George Wiafi, who is standing by at the event ground for some more updates. George, you're welcome to the marketplace.
Thank you so much, Wiafi.
Now, so what has the governor been saying about this transaction?
So it was more of one of the shortest remarks when responding to this particular issue with respect to whether the Bank of Ghana has indeed approved this whole transaction or not. As far as the Bank of Ghana is concerned, they have not approved this deal. But some would say that let's try and contextualize this whole argument and development going on. When you engage officials of Unibank, they are saying that they have taken controlling stake in ADB and maybe well sort of subject to the approval of the regulator. But again, engaging some officials of the Bank of Ghana, what we understand is that they are yet to even receive any written request from these two banks in terms of this transaction that has taken place.
Now, George, so do you know whether Belstar, that's a major shareholder in ADB, has also relinquished its shares?
Well, if I hear you right about Belstar, a little bit of a background to this whole development. Now, Belstar took controlling stake in ADB, or took quite significant stake in ADB. Now, what we understand was that before this thing happened, Belstar had told government that they are no longer interested in the shares of holding those significant shares in ADB. So if government is still interested, they should come in and take these shares. But they had about 30 days to actually respond to this particular issue, as in whether they're going to take up the shares or not. Now, those 30 days has elapsed, and that is why the decision was taken, as in whichever investor that they want to hand over the shares to, they give those shares to. And that is why we understand that all these other significant investors who hold significant stake in ADB have pledged to give their shares to Unibank, but subject to all these regulators, the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Bank of Ghana actually approving this deal.
Oh, now, George, early this morning, the CEO of Unibank confirmed the takeover. Now, with this current development going on, do you suspect this regulatory approval could be overturned in any way?
Well, you may have to speak up a little bit and come again with a question in terms of what you're trying to say.
Yes, my question is that, do you suspect that the regulation or the approval for this takeover could be overturned in the event that the Bank of Ghana, has some inconsistencies in this particular takeover?
So it is interesting, depending on where you are standing. Some would argue that if you acquire certain significant stake in another institution, automatically per the laws, you're supposed to trigger the takeover clause. But with respect to these two banks, they are also one of them that is listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange. Now, you need an approval from the Securities and Exchange Commission. You need an approval from the Bank of Ghana. So it means that if these regulators don't give their blessings to it, that takeover cannot happen. But let's also draw the line that there can be a controlling stake in this institution, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they can go ahead and influence the strategic direction of the bank. So yes, of course, Unibank can go ahead and have that controlling stake based on these exchange of shares. But in terms of them taking over the bank, if the Bank of Ghana does not approve it, it means that it might not happen in your favor.
All right, so if the approval goes on, what is going to happen to workers as well as customers of both banks?
Well, for industry players, if you try and engage industry players, depending on who you engage, actually, they will tell you that there's nothing wrong or what has happened is not wrong. Because if indeed these other players have pledged their shares to Unibank, it's just a process. And maybe as the process goes on, the Bank of Ghana might be informed. Others are also arguing that it might not be good to fight with the regulator on these things. So behind the scenes, why don't you engage the regulator on this issue even before coming up? So whichever way you look at it, depending on how you want to look at the law, some are saying that there is nothing wrong with what Unibank has done. Some are also saying that, well, maybe you might have to get the regulators' blessing before you go ahead with this thing.
All right, now currently we hear that GSE, that is the stock exchange, has suspended trading in ADB's activity. ADB's shares on the bears, and they would have to wait, like you said, to see what actually happens. But what else has been happening at the event?
Well, this is one of the headquarters of EcoBank, and what we saw here today is the formal commissioning of the bank by the president, and this is supposed to house all the departments of EcoBank, and all it's about in their quest to position themselves as the biggest bank in the country. Now, you talk about the fact that you're the biggest bank in this country. Edifices do matter a lot, and therefore for them this could be one of the biggest edifices in this country in terms of the head office of a commercial bank. The president in his address again challenged the banks to do more in responding to developments that have happened in the economy by dropping down their rates. The governor of the Bank of Ghana also talked about the fact that they are committed to ensuring that the banks comply with the required corporate governance rules, and therefore they are committed that what happened in Unibank or what happened in UT Bank and Capital Bank wouldn't happen again.
All right, thank you very much, George, for that update. And that was my colleague, George Riafi, reaching us live from the headquarters of the new headquarters building of EcoBank Ghana. And he's been sharing some thoughts on the takeover of ADB Bank by Unibank, as well as some other events happening on the grounds. Apart from that, Ghana is yet to leverage its cultural arts in the construction sector as new building designs spring up. Well-renowned architect David Ajayi brings some hope into the local industry. He has been explaining how Ghana can make a name using new architectural designs based on the country's rich cultural heritage.
Ghana over the years has been boasting of its rich and unique cultural heritage. A distinct part of the Ghanaian culture is its traditional arts and crafts. Some of the country's traditional arts have been recognized as communication symbols which convey important messages. David Ajayi is the CEO of Ajayi Associates and designer of the Ghana National Cathedral, which is expected to address the missing link in the nation's architecture. It's also to provide a touch of a national purpose. The internationally acclaimed architect, who is known for his several outstanding projects across the world, believes Ghanaian architects can depend more on the nation's unique culture.
I think technology is something that we all must try and master, because it's a new resource that's like water. You know, it's like having water pumping into your house. You have to kind of know how to use it. So I think learning how to use and master the technology is very important if you have access. If you don't, try and see if you can get an awareness of it, try and learn about it, because technology allows us to kind of map and understand.
He says this can be made easier with the use of technology.
I think that Ghanaian architecture is just at the beginnings of its modern reinterpretation. I think its history is very strong and very powerful, but we haven't haven't actually found a modern Ghanaian language yet. So I think we're still struggling with what that could be. And I think that this is a great opportunity to try and work out what that can be, because histories of different regions, and to make it knowledge that we can share collectively. It's not just in one local person. So we can actually try to use that information to learn from, to then try and develop what modern African architecture, West African architecture, Ghanaian architecture, this regional architecture can be. I think this is a very exciting time, and we have to do this.
David Ajay was speaking on the sidelines of an event organized by Anno Gallery on the past, present, and future of architecture.
And this month of March, that's a Ghana month, on the Joy Business Van, we will begin a new series putting the spotlight on business of art. Versatile, fine artist Akufo-Addo kickstarts our series today. For him, art is not only lucrative, but an opportunity to project Ghana in a very positive light. Let's see a bit of what to expect today.
It's a few days to Ghana's Independence Day celebration, and somewhere at Jamestown in Accra, Akufo-Addo, a versatile fine artist, is busy at work. He's been contracted by beverage company Guinness Ghana to do one of the things he loves the most, street art. Today, he's telling Ghana's independence story from his perspective and what he wants to see of the country in future. This is what Mohammed, who works under the signature name Mo, does for a living. Mo was born and raised in the Zongo community of Nima. He discovered his artistic skills very early and he pursued it.
When I was very young, around the age of 9 or 10 years, back in primary school. So after my junior high, I enrolled to an arts college. So I started discovering that I can make money from art. So from there, I used to do paintings, take them to art center, sometimes at the exhibition. That's what I used to pay my fees and all that. So from there, I think I've been doing art every day.
Right, so you get a full story of Addo on the Joy Business Van this evening on Business Live. And that wraps up this afternoon's edition of The Marketplace. Many thanks for joining me. My name is Emmanuel Abuaki. Have a good afternoon.